Now let us continue with the solution or exact solution of the Navier-Stokes equation that we were demonstrating. The example that we talked about in the previous class was the flow through a rectangular channel. Let me first share my writing pad and then we will get into more examples. Okay. So hopefully you can see the writing pad, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the next example that we will talk about is the Couette flow. Couette flow, it is classically described by the following. So you have two parallel plates and there is a viscous fluid of viscosity mu between the two plates. The top plate is pulled towards, say, the right. I mean, doesn't matter which plate is pulled in which direction. The main thing is the relative velocity between the two plates in the axial direction. In the axial direction, not in any other direction. So that is critical. So here the relative velocity in this example is created by keeping the bottom plate stationary and the top plate moving towards the right in this case with say a velocity, let us give it a name, say u0. Okay. So it is assumed that the plate is sufficiently long so that we are into the fully developed region. As I have discussed earlier, what is meant by fully developed flow. So that is something which is happening here. The gap is narrow and we can set up x or y axis. Say this is x and this is y. These are parallel plates, so we are not bringing in the complexity due to the three-dimensional scenario because the physics will be described well by this two-dimensional thing. Now let us try to analyze this problem, but even before that, let us try to understand why such problem is at all important from the engineering viewpoint. Have you ever seen anybody physically pulling one plate and that is how dragging fluid along with it? In no imagination, we can very commonly see such a means in controlling fluid flow. But then why is this important? So I will give you two viewpoints, one a practical viewpoint and another one a more scientifically based fundamental viewpoint, and I will give the practical viewpoint first. So in the industry, in real practical engineering, there is something which is very commonly called as bearing. So if there is a rotating device, a rotating shaft, so this is basically a cylindrical rod which is called as a shaft, which is rotating. So in between this, so I can put a direction of rotation to indicate that it is rotating. Now this shaft, during its rotation, you have to imagine that it is very long. In industry, these are long cylindrical pieces which transfer power from one place to another. by essentially sharing the rotational motion. Now in the process they are also deflecting from their axial location. This is the axis, it will deflect and vibrate. So it needs some kind of support. So you have something called as bearing. There is a casing. So this is a bearing. And this is not the only example of a bearing. I mean, there could be so many different types of bearing having absolutely no geometric resemblance with this. So I would not generalize this as a general description of bearing, but this is just an example. And this type of bearing is called as journal bearing. So now, so basically you have supporting another surface. Now, when this is sort of deflecting from its center, if you had a support, you have to imagine that the support cannot be far away. So it's a narrow gap between the shaft and the bearing. So in the process, the shaft can directly come in contact with the bearing, and there could be a direct solid material to solid material contact. That is very commonly in industry metal to metal contact. So that will create wear, tear, friction, and the device may not perform, the machine may not perform. So what you do is you put a lubricant oil. So typically you have a highly viscous lubricant oil, which is between the bearing and the shaft to reduce the friction between these two. So now the friction will be through indirect viscous interaction rather than direct metal to metal contact. Because this gap is very narrow, although these have curvature, locally they can be conceived as very similar to parallel plates, because the curvature effect may be very important if the gap is large. If the gap is small, the curvature effect is not that important. That is the difference in curvature between the two surfaces. Now, out of these surfaces, in this case, the inner one is having a tangential motion. If omega is the angular velocity and r is the radius, you have the tangential velocity equal to omega r. And the bearing if it is stationary, so we have this kind of a situation where this u is equivalent to this omega r. So you can imagine that this is a simplified model picture of the real industrial scenario where you have a viscous fluid intervening a shaft and a bearing in an effort to reduce the friction during their operation. So that is one of the motivations. It is not all, but I just wanted to start with a motivation with a clear understanding that although somebody is not physically pulling one plate on the top of the other, this problem has a practical relevance, and that is why it is discussed. So let us solve the problem and try to see that what is the fundamental physical relevance in addition to the practical one. Okay. So to do that, let us write the parallel plate channel equation. So if you recall the plane Poiseuille flow, that equation that we wrote, so 0 is equal to minus dp dy this we had derived in details. So this derivation of governing equation is not a function of the boundary condition. So here the boundary condition has changed, the plate is being pulled, etc. But this is just governing equation, and the governing equation is just talking about what fully developed means u is not a function of x. And this is true because it's a long channel, and nothing is varying with x as you have entered into the sufficient depth of the channel, and from then onwards you should not vary with x. So we are considering that fully developed region. So this is true. Now the question is that so you have, if you integrate this, or first of all, before integrating, so dp dx, sorry, so either P or P star, whatever you call, depending on piezometric or just pressure, depending on whether gravity effect is important or not, or height effect is important. So now, so this is a function of y only. This is very similar to what we did for the pressure driven flow in parallel plate. And this is function of x only. And what we meant, that implies that each is equal to a constant, which is equal to c. So that means we can write dp star dx equal to c. That means p star versus x is linear. So if you consider a length of L, and this is p at 0, we call it p0, and this is p at L. So this is nothing but p at L minus p at 0 divided by L, right? If dp dx is constant, that means p versus x is linear, and this is the slope of the straight line. Now, in reality, one may apply a pressure gradient, not that this is 0. So you call something as pure Couette flow, when you do not apply any pressure gradient. That means there is no Poiseuille component. That means P0 equal to PL. So both may be atmospheric pressure. And that means that there is no pressure driven component of the flow. Okay. We will see that if the flow is not a pure Couette flow, then what happens? That we will see. But if it is a pure Couette flow, then these two are the same. That means this will be equal to 0. So that means the simplest differential, second order differential equation that you can get on the earth appears, that is d2u dy2 equal to 0. Right? If you integrate it twice, so du dy, du dy equal to c1 and u equal to c1y plus c2. Okay. So we can apply the boundary condition at y equal to 0. At y equal to 0 is what? The bottom wall. So u equal to 0. That means if you put it here at y equal to 0, u equal to 0, you will get c2 equal to 0. And at y equal to h, that is the top plate, u equal to u0. So what is this? This is the real manifestation of no slip boundary condition. No slip means there is no relative tangential velocity between the fluid and the solid boundary. Relative is important. That means if the solid boundary is stationary, the fluid will also be stationary in the tangential direction. If the solid boundary is moving with a speed, the fluid will also move with the same speed in the same direction. So that means here u will be equal to u0. So that means you have u0 is equal to c1h. That means c1 equal to u0 by h. So what you get out of this is u equal to u0 into y by h. This is the velocity profile. So let me just highlight this. So this is a linear function of y. So if you make a plot of the velocity profile with vectors, etc. So let us try to do that. So if you want to make a plot at y equal to 0, it is 0. Here it is u0. So you have a straight line. So this is the velocity. So if you have a velocity profile like this, one of the very important features is the velocity gradient, du dy, which is u0 by h. So what is physically du dy? This is the rate of deformation. Recall that the rate of deformation in kinematics is in the xy plane, right? Here there is no v, so there is no question of this. And u being a function of y, this becomes du dy. So this is the rate of deformation. So it shows that the rate of deformation, in this case the deformation is shear deformation that we are talking about. So this is rate of deformation shear, not linear. So rate of shear deformation, or this is shear strain rate, is u0 by h. If you are pulling the plate with a constant velocity u0 and h is anyway a given dimension, so this is a constant. That means if you are interested to impose a constant shear rate or rate of deformation, shear rate or rate of deformation, you can design that by equating the shear rate with u0 by h. So you can choose your u0 and choose your h in such a way that this is corresponding to your desired shear rate. In that way, this conceptual setup can mimic a shear driven flow. So here, physically the flow is taking place purely by the action of shear. So you are having a shear force at the top of the plate, which is by no slip boundary condition, the fluid is moving here with a velocity u0. So the relative motion of that fluid layer with a fluid layer which is immediately at, just it's below, that doesn't directly feel the effect of the plate. So that will implicitly feel the effect of the plate via viscosity, and therefore it will not really directly move with the velocity u0, but it will move with a velocity somewhat less than u0, but not abruptly 0. It will come to 0 only at that location where it is forced to be 0. So in that way, a velocity field is created by virtue of the shear that is generated between the two plates. And that is why this is called as a shear driven flow. So the plane Poiseuille flow that we had discussed is a pressure driven flow. This pure Couette flow is called as a shear driven flow. And in reality, you could have a combination. So this pressure gradient, which I have taken as 0, in reality it is not necessarily 0. So it may be 0 or may not be 0. If it is not 0, so let us say that you have a solution u equal to u1, which is the pressure driven flow solution, and u equal to u2, which is the shear driven solution. Say we write it. So if u equal to u1 is the pressure driven flow solution, so you have mu d2 u1 dy2 is equal to dp dx, whatever it is not 0, and u2 is the shear driven solution, so this is 0. So now just add these two, just algebraically add. So mu d2 dy2 into u1 plus u2 is equal to dp star dx, right? So now if you could construct a solution which is u equal to u1 plus u2, you can linearly add simply the two solutions and sum it up to get the complete solution. So this is one of the great things which is happening because this differential equation is a linear differential equation. So simple addition is giving the additive effect in the solution. So with this linearity, you can really get an independent pressure driven component and you can get a shear driven component and simply add these two. And this addition can give rise to very interesting features. So I'm just trying to draw a sketch of U1 and U2 and trying to show you that certain very interesting things can happen. Let us say that we are drawing U1 in this diagram and U2 in another diagram, and we'll just add them together. So U1, let us say, is the pressure driven. So this is pressure driven. So if the pressure driven flow is in this direction, this is the typical parabolic profile that you have. And U2, if this is pulled, then U2 will be this. So this is the most this trivial case. So this is shear driven. So their addition will give some net velocity and some net flow rate. Now let us imagine that U1 is like this, same as before. But the top plate is pulled in the opposite direction. So let us say that it is being pulled towards the left, U0. So there will be some forward motion driven by the pressure driven component and the backward motion which is given by this one. So overall, the resultant could be some part of the domain Y where the red wins over the black and some part where the black wins over the red. Accordingly, you could have either a forward flow or a reverse flow, and at some point the resultant of these two can be such that the net flow is zero or the net velocity is zero. So you may have a zero local velocity and reverse flow. All those things can happen, and once you have one of the net one, say you have some situation. I'm just giving you an example. So you can have, let us say, the no slip here, some forward flow here, and a reverse flow like this. This can happen. So this is U0 at this boundary, this is 0 at this boundary. So you can have some positive and some negative, some zero somewhere. The interesting part of is that except for this point, at all other points the velocity is not zero, but it may be possible because some is positive and some is negative. If you integrate it from 0 to h, this may be 0. That means, in other words, the local velocity at individual points except maybe one point may not be 0, but the total flow rate may be 0. That is, the combined effort is not able to drive any net flow. So many such situations may be possible, but extremely trivial to work out because of this linear superposition, the linearity of the governing differential equation. The next example that I will talk about is actually a very difficult problem, but I will simplify it to the extent that we can talk about the most essential aspects in this particular course, that is thin film flow. So again, instead of being hypothetical, I will give you a practical scenario. Let us say there is an inclined plane, maybe a surface which is inclined to the horizontal with an angle theta, and G is acting vertically downwards. Very common mechanics problem that all of you have solved. And there is a thin liquid film of thickness h, viscosity mu. is coming down the incline solely due to gravity. Solely due to gravity because P0 and PL, this is L is the length of the inclined plane. So both are atmospheric. So it is simply an open atmosphere in which a thin film is flowing down. So there is no pressure gradient imposed. So the only effective pressure gradient imposed is due to the gravity effect, by which the fluid is coming down the incline. But when it is coming down, viscous effects are resisting, and therefore in equilibrium, when it is fully developed, so fully developed means the forces are in equilibrium. I have discussed it earlier. You will have all the forces balanced. So the driving gravity force and the resistive viscous force, they will balance. And that is what we want to make use of to understand what is the velocity profile in the film. That is, where this liquid is there. You may say that outside the liquid, what is there? So maybe there is air, which is significantly less dense and viscous as compared to this thin liquid film. So we'll assume that this is much less than. Okay. So that is what is the physical situation. So let us try to describe the problem, assuming that it's a 2D problem, parallel plate like situation, where there is no physical plate at the top. This is a free liquid surface. It's not a plate physically, but a 2D situation. So you have a x-axis and y-axis, fully developed flow, steady flow, and constant density. So these are the standard assumptions that we take for these types of problems. And of course, there are many problems where it is not steady, but here there is no inherent steadiness. That means either boundary condition or something. We are not putting any unsteady component or time dependent component. So it will attain steady state at some point of time, and we consider the state from then onwards. And density of this liquid we are considering as constant, which is not a very bad assumption. So once we have this, again you see that with the fully developed two-dimensional steady constant density, it will boil down to the same equation. Is equal to minus dp dx. So I will decompose the p star as p plus the gravity dependent term, because I will separately put the body force. So I will not include it in p star, but separately put the body force. But let us put the viscous term. So plus the body force will now come. I mean, the other way could be you could include the body force in this p by calling it p star is equal to p plus the rho gh effect, but we will not do that. So rho gh effect will come through the body force per unit volume in the x direction. This is x momentum we have to understand. So along the x direction, the component of g is g sine theta. So plus rho g sine theta. So let us separate these ones. So dp dx is equal to mu d2u dy2 plus rho g sine theta. Again, very similar to the form in which we had solved the previous problems. This is function of x only. This is function of y only. So this means H is equal to constant is equal to say PL minus P0 by L. Both are atmospheric pressure, as I have mentioned in the problem definition. So this is PA minus PA, that is 0. So you have dP dx equal to 0. That means this equation will lead to, I'm just erasing it and replacing it. I mean, this step, some people just verbally tell and jump to the state in which I'm describing it now. That is d2u dy2 is equal to 1 by mu rho g sin theta. But I just showed you that where from this comes. Now you integrate it twice, just like the previous example. So at boundary condition, at y, sorry. So boundary condition number 1. At y equal to 0, u equal to 0. This is no slip. And at y equal to h, what it is. This is a golden question because the boundary condition that we write normally to solve this problem is a significantly more simplified version than what could be in reality. So to explain what could be in reality just by physics without getting into the mathematical part, because until and unless you understand the physics, it doesn't help if a lot of vector equations are put. So this is this interface that I intended to draw by considering that this is flat. In reality, this interface could have a curvature, some kind of small scale or large scale waviness, etc. That depends on many things. For example, if the interface becomes unstable, it could have a wavy characteristic. Even if it is stable, it could deviate from flatness. So when the interface has a curvature, whatever form of curvature, so let us say that the interface is like this locally. So it will have a tangential component and it will have a normal component. So this is the tangential component. And sorry. This is the normal component. So when it is curved interface, we have to see what are the conditions that have to be fulfilled in terms of the parameters in the tangent and the normal direction. I'm just getting a message in my computer that network quality is bad, at least at my end. So if you could confirm that you are getting the voice and what I'm writing, I will go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
It's fine, right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now, if you resolve the force balance in the tangential direction, there will be a tangential stress which is due to tangential force at the interface, and that must be balanced. So at the interface, this tangential force would be due to the viscous shear force, which is just that, tau equal to mu into the rate of deformation, that viscous shear that is tangential to the interface. And there could be a tangential force due to a tangential gradient of surface tension. That means the surface tension which tries to keep the interface under tension, and then this is the interface between two phases, one air and another liquid. So if this interfacial force is such that there is a change in surface tension along x, along the direction of the axis, or in this case that will have a tangential component. So there will be a shear due to surface tension gradient. Surface tension gradient. So all in all, you will get force balance where you will have sum, the vector sum, or in this case algebraic sum in the tangent direction for shear force, viscous shear and surface tension gradient driven shear. Sum total of that is balanced. That means from the lower side of the interface, whatever it is, that remains continuous. That is, there is no jump across that. That means the same is there as you cross and go to the other side. So here is the liquid side, here is the air side. So as you cross the liquid and the air side, the continuity should be there in sum total of this. That must be continuous in a continuous domain, because at there it's a fluid domain, part is liquid and part is air, but there should be a continuity in the shear, in the total shear stress. So if there is no surface tension gradient, let us say that is not there, we will not complicate the situation by this. If there is a temperature gradient along x direction, there could be a surface tension gradient, because surface tension is a function of temperature. But in case not, and let us not complicate that here, so let us say that is 0 for this case. This is an example, not always. So you must have a continuity in the viscous shear along the tangential direction. In the normal direction, the normal stress balance will be there, and the equation for the normal stress balance is the jump in the normal stress, or the difference in normal stress across the interface is equal to the surface tension coefficient into 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2. In a static interface, this difference in normal stress is only due to the pressure difference, that is delta P. In a dynamic problem, it is delta P plus the viscous normal stress. So whatever it is, so this in physics you may have studied, I'm sure it, and in some level or the other, the pressure difference across a curved interface in equilibrium is this one. Now here what happens is that if you look at the flat interface that we have assumed, it will have two implications. One is that instead of this, we have idealized as a flat one. So the tangential direction doesn't vary locally. The tangential is always x. Had it been a undulated interface, the tangential would locally vary. But here, if it is a flat interface, it doesn't vary locally. More critically, if it's a flat interface, the radius of curvature is infinity. So that 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2, this will become 0 for the flat interface. And therefore, it doesn't create any additional force due to pressure differential that will create any motion along y. In this case, for a flat interface, the normal is y. And therefore, we can be just restrictive to motion along x, where it boils down to simple continuity of viscous shear. So with all these into backdrop, we can write that viscous shear is continuous, and because u is a function of say y only, so mu du dy at the liquid is same as mu air into du dy at the air. This is the continuity of this viscous shear. So sometimes I mean in books people will start with this as a boundary condition, but all the physics based background that has led to this, that also has to be clearly kept in mind, that in many cases in reality the actual boundary condition is significantly more complicated mathematically than this, because the physical simplifications which has led to this mathematical simplification in terms of interface curvature and surface tension effects has to be kept in mind. Now we will consider two more practical aspects which will enable us to simplify this further. One is that we all know that the viscosity of the air is typically much less than the viscosity of the liquid, typically 1000 times maybe. So we can say for this liquid, I mean 1000 times I am saying keeping in view a watery fluid. I mean there could be fluids which are almost very light and not as heavy as that, but I'm giving this as a common example of engineering fluid. And if it's a viscous oil, it is even more viscous. And there is no velocity gradient in the air, because velocity gradient in the liquid is primarily triggered by the no slip boundary condition at the physical solid wall. In the air, there is no such physical restriction that is imposing a velocity gradient. So that means this is small and this is also small. So the product is so small that it will be virtually zero. And because left hand side is equal to right hand side, so these are all small. Small means small as compared to what is appearing the counterparts in the left hand side in comparison to that. So that will lead to du dy equal to 0 in the liquid interface. So all the problems which are solved in the books related to this either will start with this or will even directly consider this. But the assumptions that are coming are very critical, because if the problem is slightly changed where this assumption is not valid, and if you still follow this boundary condition, that will be a wrong solution to the problem. So now with these boundary conditions, let us solve the problem. So if we integrate it, so du dy is equal to 1 by mu rho g sine theta into y plus c1, and u is equal to 1 by mu rho g sine theta y square by 2 plus c1y plus c2. Now we can use the boundary condition number 2, that is at y equal to h, du dy equal to 0. So 0 is equal to 1 by mu rho g sine theta into h plus c1. So you can get a value of c1 from here. And the boundary condition number 1 will give u equal to 0 at y equal to 0. So you get a value of c2 equal to 0 and c1 is minus of this. So you can clean up everything and write an expression for the velocity profile. So that is u equal to 1 by mu rho g sine theta into y square by 2 minus 1 by mu rho g sine theta into h into y. That is from here. So this is 1 by mu rho g sine theta into y square by 2 minus yh. Okay. There is only one adjustment that we have to make while writing this equation, because d2u dy2 was on the other side and rho g sine theta, so it was d2u dy2 plus this is equal to 0, and we have integrated, but before that the velocity gradient was taken in one side and this term on the other side, this is a minus, right? So recall that 0 is equal to mu d2u dy2 plus rho g sine theta, right? So from there, if you take it on the other side, that will be minus. So in that way, nothing, only this algebraic correction will be there. So in that way, this will be minus and this will be plus. So this will be minus. Okay. So we can see that this clearly satisfies the boundary condition. The velocity is always positive because this is smaller than this, so this part is negative and that negative into this is positive. So this is a simple thin film flow which can be altered in many ways, and more complex situations on thin film flows you will encounter if you do a very complex analysis where the interface can be arbitrarily undulated. Other forces like rotational force, electrical force, those kinds of forces act, and the film is so thin that this y, this h, say if it is intermolecular, approaching the intermolecular length scale, say few angstroms, then the van der Waals forces of interaction will become important, and in that way that will give rise to an additional force at the interface because of van der Waals interaction. For flat interfaces, it may not directly have impact, but that force itself, if it is acting normal to the direction of the this x direction, and the force is really related to the thickness of the liquid film, so that force will be proportional to typically 1 by h cube. So if h is very small, that force will be quite large, and in the y direction that will create such a perturbation that the interface will change its topology and other things, and it will alter the force balance in the process. So that can have a very strong influence on the thin film. Typically a thin film which has a very angstrom level adsorbed molecular layer. So this just shows that a simple, apparently simple problem, how complex it can be depending on the complexity that we are imagining to describe the reality. So let us now stop the discussion here. So what I would also like to mention that okay, tomorrow we have the next class. We will continue. Thursday is a Diwali holiday, I presume. So in the next week we will continue after Thursday. Tomorrow's class we will have as usual. But what I want to tell you is that I want to have a second class test in the next week, and the mode of this class test will be a bit different from the standard thing. I will share with you a video on something that is happening in real life. A video that is representing of something that is happening in real life, in fact, day-to-day life. And I will ask you to develop a mathematical model by using whatever that has been taught so far in the course. Could be the integral mass momentum balance or Navier-Stokes equation, whatever, energy balance, mass balance, whatever has been discussed so far in this course. You will be asked to develop a mathematical framework to explain what is going on there. So it will not be a bookish or a problem from the exercise of the book that will be there. I'm sure that this kind of test is something that you have earlier not come across, but this is something which will give you a new flavor of what is going on. You are doing an online course where you must be heavily stressed. I do not stress you that much in terms of giving lots of homework, quizzes, etc. But there will invariably be some courses where you have lots of assignments and heavy bookish work that you have to do. So this will give you a sort of different flavor from what goes on in bookish education. And let us just see how it evolves. Not that I want to have the final exam in that format, but this is just one-off exercise which will give you a different flavor of having an exam in an online mode, which normally you will not have. With this, let us close this today, and we will continue in the next class tomorrow. Thank you.